So welcome to African Boss. My question today is, what is the African stance on the ongoing war between Israel and the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip as the threat of an all-out war in the Middle East grows by the minute? The African Union has so far made a statement which appeared to back Palestine, and not everyone is happy about that statement. A few other African countries such as Nigeria, Egypt, Algeria, Kenya, and a few others have spoken on the ongoing war in Israel. But before we look at what they had to say, I must mention that Africa's stance is going to be very important because there is a precedent. When the Russia-Ukraine war started, the Western countries took it for granted that the African countries will stand with them against the Russians. In some cases, some powerful Western nations even threatened to withhold aid if the African countries did not toe the line. Many African countries did not condemn Russia, neither did they support Ukraine. They maintained a neutral stance. But this war is different. The elephant in the room is the religious aspect of it. It is a war with a complex history rooted in religion and faith, with the potential of devastating consequences for the world. But we are hoping for a peaceful resolution, which for now, unfortunately, seems unlikely. All we can hope for is de-escalation and some sort of truce to save innocent lives on both sides of the fence that are being lost. These days, information travel at a breakneck speed, so therefore social media is awash with videos and images of the conflict. Some are accurate, others are not. On Saturday, the 7th of October at 6:30 in the morning, the sirens went off in Israel, warning a resident of rocket attacks. This is not new in Israel. It has always happened now and again when rockets are fired from either Gaza or South Lebanon. The people go down to the bunkers if available, or go to a safe place and let the famous iron domes do their thing. The iron domes are the sophisticated billion-dollar anti-rocket defense system placed in strategic positions in Israel which intercept rockets, whether fired by Hamas in Gaza or Hezbollah, the militant group based in southern Lebanon. But as thousands of rockets were fired from Gaza Strip into Israel, it became clear that this was different. The Iron Dome system at times appeared to have been overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of the barrage of rockets, which are estimated to have been around 3,000 according to the Israeli military, while the Hamas report about 5,000 rockets. The truth is probably somewhere in between. In any case, that is a lot of rockets, which we now know were a part of a well-coordinated attack. The rocket attacks were also used to provide cover for drone strikes on the monitoring systems, which the Israeli Defense Force used on the border fence to monitor what is happening around their borders. At the same time, heavy explosives and other heavy vehicles then created as many as 80 breaches on the fence that separates Gaza from Israel. Mind you, this fence has been a formidable defensive tool. It costs about $3 billion. This is a lot of money considering Gaza Strip is such a small area. So a lot went into that defensive system. The Hamas assault was augmented by air motorized hand gliders who flew into the border towns and also utilized speedboats via the Mediterranean Sea. Approximately 1,000 Hamas men then flooded into Israel and infiltrated border towns, kibbutz communities, and a music festival where young people were gunned down mercilessly. All this took the Israelis by surprise indeed. The panicked Israelis from the border towns stayed in their homes as the terrorists went door to shoot civilians, kidnap, and dragged the residents into Gaza. These actions were indiscriminate. Men, women, children, babies, and the elderly suffered the same fate. This was a brutal attack, the likes which has never been seen before in Israel. Shortly after the attack began, Mohammed Deif, the commander of the Hamas military arm, Al-Qassam Brigade, released a video claiming responsibility for the attacks. Mohammed Deif has become the most wanted man at this time. Think of Bin Laden. He is the new Bin Laden. He stated that the Hamas had commenced an operation code named Al-Aqsa Flood. This name is significant. Why? Al-Aqsa Mosque is located in the old city of Jerusalem, in a compound that the Muslims consider their third holiest site, and they call the compound Haram al-Sharif. But the Jews call it Temple Mount, and it is their holiest place in Judaism. A few hours later, the on and off and longest serving Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu, spoke on television and declared that Israel is at war. This is not a so-called military operation, not another round of fighting, but war. As Netanyahu spoke, Israel began to retaliate with deadly force, firing a barrage of rockets into Gaza, and has continued to pound Gaza with rockets and missiles by the hour. Netanyahu stated that Israel was about to engage in a long and difficult war with the intentions to decimate Hamas once and for all. The bad news is, it's the fourth day today, well, at least while I was recording, and over 1,000 Israelis are dead and thousands injured. That number is expected to rise. Meanwhile, the Palestinian authorities are reporting more than 800 dead with thousands injured. Again, these numbers are expected to rise as well. Israel has since declared that they have finally secured their border towns. However, the war is intensifying, with thousands of Israel Defense Force preparing for a ground invasion into Gaza. Now that is not going to be pretty by any stretch of the imagination, for both sides, that is. Now, a quick discussion on Hamas. Who are the Hamas? Let's start with the meaning. Hamas means Islamic Resistance Movement. It is a Sunni Islamist militant group that was formed around 1987, a spin-off the Muslim Brotherhood. Its headquarters is in Qatar, where the top party leader operates from. Israel and its allies, that is the USA and the UK and other Western powers, consider Hamas as a terrorist group. Hamas is committed to the destruction of Israel, which it considers as an occupation force. Hamas is relatively a new organization that governs Gaza after winning the majority of the parliamentary seats in 2007, taking over from the more moderate Fatah, which governs the West Bank, that is the other Palestinian territory. No elections have been held in Gaza since 2007, when the Hamas came into power. The ongoing Israel-Palestinian conflict is long and complex, and there have been a lot of significant conflicts in their history. But for context, we take a look at a few which I think are in the context of this latest escalation of violence. Let's briefly go back to June the 5th up to June the 10th, 1967, when Israel famously fought its neighbors Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and won. This was after Egypt established a blockade for Israel ships' access to Suez Canal and the Straits of Tehran, which was considered an act of aggression or an act of war by Israel. So what followed was a 6-day war which Israel won, and in the process expanded its territory by seizing the Gaza Strip from Egypt, the West Bank including East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. These actions would have long-term consequences over the years, including the recent events. The territory disputes led to the first Intifada from 1987 to 1991, which involved violence, protest, and riots against Israel occupation of Palestinian territories. The second Intifada was from 2000 to 2005. It is not a coincidence then that a Hamas attack comes in a day after the 50th anniversary of what is called the Yom Kippur Wars. I'll briefly explain the Yom Kippur War, which started on October 6, 1973. So, hoping to win back territory lost to Israel during the Third Arab-Israel War in 1967, which I've already talked about, Egypt and Syrian forces launched a coordinated attack against Israel on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, taking the Israel Defense Force by surprise. Egyptian troops swept deep into Sinai Peninsula, while Syria struggled to throw occupying Israel troops out of the Golan Heights. And similar to this attack, Israel shook off the surprise mindset and went to work. They counter-attacked effectively and recaptured the Golan Heights and occupied more territory, with the help of the USA, of course. Again, Israel won yet another war against its neighbors. However, this was at a huge cost of life and resources on both sides. A ceasefire then would go into effect on October 25, 1973. But this time we can safely say that Israel has always punched above its weight. So the timing of this current attack by the Hamas, some have observed, aims to invoke bitter and painful emotions of defeat of the failed attempt to reoccupy the land during the Yom Kippur War as motivation. It is without a doubt that Hamas has succeeded in attacking Israel from air, land and sea. The question in everyone's mind is how the hell did Israeli security fail so badly? Israel has one of the best security agencies in the world and systems. In the first place, they have the legendary Mossad, their espionage unit, which is renowned all over the world as one of the best, if not the best spy agency in the world. With a 3 billion annual budget and 7,000 strong staff, Mossad is the second largest agency in the world after the CIA. The attack itself was such large scale. That is why people are calling this Israel's 9/11 due to failure of intelligence. For sure, there will be jobs on the line once the dust settles, and questions will be asked of the spy agencies, the lax body security, the slow response time, and obviously political questions will be asked of Netanyahu and his political party, the Likud party, and their right-wing coalition and ideology, which has taken a hard line against the Palestinians. There are reports that Israel was lured into a false sense of security, that Hamas had no appetite for a fight or the resources to initiate an attack of this scale. Some have pointed out that maybe the deep political divide that exists among the Israel community and political parties and the position on governance issues could be a contributing factor which encouraged the Hamas to attack at this opportune time. What is the African perspective so far? The African Union, which is a body that is similar to European Union, but that's in Africa, they produced a communique or a statement by the chairperson of the African Union, Musa Faki Mahamat. He said he expressed concern of the outbreak of the current Israel-Palestinian hostilities causing grave consequences, etc., etc. But then he goes on to say that the chairperson wishes to recall that denial of the fundamental rights of the Palestinian people, particularly that of an independent and sovereign state, is the main cause of the permanent Israel-Palestinian tension. So a number of countries were not happy with this response because it seemed like it was taking the side of the Palestinians, which is and won't be the opinion or the position of African countries. That is for sure, because they're already divided as it is at the moment. Just saying from the statements that they're producing, I can just say mostly Africa is neutral at the moment, just wanting the hostilities to cease and get on the negotiating table. That is the general sort of message coming from the continent. But South Africa statement continues on to say the new conflagration has arisen from the continued illegal occupation of Palestine land, continued settlement expansion, desecration of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and Christian holy sites, and ongoing oppression of the Palestinian people. So it seems like it's sort of maybe blaming the Israel side of things, but South Africa has always sided with Palestine. Yasser Arafat was a friend of Nelson Mandela. I do believe that there was some help to the African National Congress, which was fighting apartheid. So they are linked in that kind of space. Zimbabwe is pretty neutral. It just says they're calling for a durable and just solution to the Palestine-Israel conflict. But Algeria comes out strong. Your guess is as good as mine, but they're saying Algeria strongly condemns the brutal airstrikes by the Zionist occupation forces in the Gaza Strip, and which caused many casualties, including children and women. So they're basically blaming Israel for everything. Egypt, the first Arab country to normalize relations with Israel, has mediated between Israel and Palestinian factions during previous conflicts in Gaza. They've taken a neutral stance and they have pressed to prevent further escalation in the current fighting. So it is more of a neutral position. The government of Nigeria is the same. Part of the statement says the federal government of Nigeria therefore calls on both sides to exercise restraint, prioritize the safety of civilians, and give room for humanitarian considerations. We are therefore calling for a peaceful resolution of the conflict through dialogue. Lastly, we look at the Kenyan reaction. President Ruto is unequivocal on where he stands. He says Kenya joins the rest of the world in solidarity with the state of Israel, and then unequivocally condemns terrorism and attacks on innocent civilians in the country. So we can see that the response is actually divided. This is not unexpected. It will be interesting to see if there will be a general consensus by the African Union on what to say on where Africa should stand. Also, because the way Africa is divided, we are going to see how Africa is going to respond to this crisis. But this is a very serious crisis, which I think is rather entering into dangerous territory. The fighting is escalating as we speak. All we can hope for a quick resolution to start talking and negotiating before things escalate any further. That is the optimist in me. But looking at the situation, that seems to be quite unlikely. What do you think Africa should do in this instance? Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video.